Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Ange McCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuitive Performance. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, whole person leadership facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. The Elevate Business podcast is here to promote the enormous contributions of small and medium-sized businesses around the world by exploring the actions that make a workplace successful, the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of an organization, and how we build whole person performance from the ground up. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, growing our learning edges, and honoring our passions with a special guest who has elevated their business, overcome obstacles, and inspires others to do the same. So glad you're here. Hi, and a warm welcome to episode number 18 of the Elevate Business podcast. Both myself, Ange McCabe, and Scott Russ are your hosts. We have the pleasure of introducing you to Allan Wille, who is a tech entrepreneur with a passion for helping people succeed with data. Allan is co-founder and CEO of Klipfolio, which for the past 20 years has made it easy and affordable for next-gen teams to make faster data-driven decisions. Working with world-renowned brands such as Zendesk, Red Cross, and Ikea. Allan also shares his advice and wisdom as a board member of various tech companies. Welcome, Allan.
Well, so pleased to be here. That 20 years really stuck out. So I think that's maybe the first time that I heard that I've been involved in this company for 20 years. So
Can you take us?
I was going to say I'll treat that as a positive.
That is a positive. 20 is a good number.
Sure.
So can you tell us a little bit about that journey across those 20 years and how you got started and a little bit more about you?
Yeah, sure. So maybe I'll back it right up. So I didn't do software or business in school. I actually did industrial design, and I was actually quite passionate about design and still am. But as it happened in sort of our last year of university, two of my friends and we started another tech company, and we really just stumbled into it. This is 1996 now, and we were building websites, and I was the designer. There was somebody coding the sites, and there was somebody selling our services, and it was so much fun. And we were building this business, and I think that's a common theme throughout all of my zigs and zags, is that I've always enjoyed building things. Mm-hmm. But that first little mini company that then actually grew up to be a fairly sizable company, and eventually it actually even did an IPO on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Mm-hmm. That was really the first turn into software. And it was from that company that I moved in 2020 or 2001 to start Klipfolio. And again, I started it with two other colleagues that I'd known for a long time. And again, I think there's a lesson in that as well. Picking your co-founders is almost like marriage. It's really, really important. And I think a lot of people do enter into that too lightly. Mm-hmm. But, we started this company, and we saw an opportunity. It was something that, again, excited us. We were building a new business. And it's remained actually somewhat consistent over the years. Even though we were selling in the early days, we were building something for consumers. It was a dashboard that allowed you to monitor the weather, your stocks, the news, the picture of the day, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. It was still a tool that allowed you as a person to monitor frequently changing data. And we've sort of grown up, and we've zeroed in on certain different target markets. But still today, we're doing the same thing. We're allowing decision makers to monitor the data that they need so that they can make faster and smarter decisions on a daily basis. So there has been that consistent thread throughout our 20-year. I'm going to start saying it now. Our 20-year history. So
it's something to celebrate, certainly in this day and age. So there's a couple of golden nuggets I heard in there. One was with regards to excitement. You said that word a few times. Mm-hmm. Is that what continuously has fueled you through the 20 years, or is there something else?
It's a good question, because I do think I think entrepreneurs need a lot to drive them forward. It really is a difficult, long journey, and I think excitement is it might be an interesting word, but it might be a little superficial. I think passion is probably the word that would keep you going even in the darkest of days. Mm-hmm. So I think there has to be that, right? There has to be sort of an undying desire to help make some aspect of what you're doing better, right? And there's a lot to be said. If you build something and somebody starts using it and feeds back that value to you, and you want to hear those words in the early days. You want to hear that, your product is being loved, and it's being needed, and it's driving value. That's really addictive to an entrepreneur, and I think that sort of feeds back into the passion that, yes, indeed, if you listen and adjust and keep at it, you can build something that has tremendous value.
Mm-hmm. So what I heard from there, Allan, was this idea that, excitement, or for a better word, passion is really what's kind of driven the company forward, and just drives entrepreneurs in general. And you mentioned, this idea of overcoming these dark days. So I'm curious if there's anything that comes to mind when you think about that, or think about a dark day, and how did you overcome maybe some of those obstacles or some of those roadblocks that came up?
Yeah. So there have been many hurdles and people and people that I trust along the way, who have either advised me, not to go down this path, or your own self-doubt sort of getting in the way. I think it's especially difficult in the early days, where the company itself doesn't have any momentum. There's no brand. You may be struggling to actually identify, who the target audience is, how to price something, will they trust us with their data, with the value that they're attributing to us. So there are so many places where I think an entrepreneur can get stuck. And I do remember a lot of periods where you don't know what the path forward is, and I think that's normal. I think what the true entrepreneurial spirit does, though, is it sort of says, okay, I don't know what the path forward is, sleep on it, let's figure this out. And I think that perseverance, again, with 20 years, there's so many ups and downs that I think can get in the way, that you really have to just say, listen, everything is a problem and everything can be solved. And I think for that reason, I think one of the most important safety nets is not only your family, your immediate family and your larger family, but also having a good business partner. And I think if you look at the statistics, the number of companies that don't make it, that have a solo founder, it's way worse. And I empathize, and I think it is much more difficult had I not had somebody that I could chat with, and somebody who could pull me up, and vice versa, I could pull them through their difficult days as well.
And And I hear some undertones around performance in the sense of there's a lens for performance in forward-thinking momentum around problem solving.
Mhm.
But I don't like to make assumptions, Alan. So when you hear that word, what does performance mean to you?
Um, well, I mean, it's an interesting word because we're in a space that we sell key performance indicators, right? We're monitoring business performance, right? Um, I actually, strangely, I don't think about that word too much. It almost seems shallow in my mind. So, I think more of how can we improve, on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. What journeys can we look at and improve those? What customer segments can we better understand? Performance is the result. It's not the input, right? I think the input is, how do you listen? How do you evolve? How do you take appropriate risk and test things, and act quickly? And I've been in countless situations where, I haven't acted quickly, and of course the results aren't there or the performance isn't there. So I think performance to me is an end state. It's a result as opposed to an input. And I think, again, like if you want to move forward with anything, what are the leading actions? What are the leading indicators? That will then help you achieve that desired performance. There's there's two books that always come to mind. One is, of course, Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And the other one that is a really, really good book is, I think the author is David Lappin. And do you guys know the title of the book? It's Lead with Greatness.
Yes.
And it's the same idea. So David Lappin is an interesting guy. So he's a business coach, but he's also a rabbi. So put those two things together and be able to write a pretty good book. But the idea with define the things that really are your fingerprint, and then if you say, well, what is most important to me? Is making money most important to me, or is that an outcome? Is loyalty most important to me, or is that an outcome of my actions? So it was sort of an interesting way to sort of figure out, well, which things are core and really important to the way I behave and act and interact with my environment, and which things are actually the outcomes of those things. So performance to me is, and upward and to the right performance to me is an outcome of hopefully more important and fundamental things.
I really like those insights around that definition of the word performance because, oddly enough or funny enough, it has almost a knee-jerk reaction with everybody when it comes to the word performance because everybody has their different lens. So a few things that came up there in the sense of it's oftentimes around your actions and your choices and using your words, your thumbprint or your fingerprint. What is that for you specifically?
So I don't really know. So I'd have to really think about that. And of course, you read the book and you're like, yes, here I am, and these things resonate. And it's been a few years since I read that book. I really enjoy working with smart people. I love working with and customers alike, customers, employees. And again, I think if we can build something together, get something, move it from A to B and see that incremental value. To me, that's something that really, really drives me. And I think I've been that way since I was a kid. I like the systems that come together that then result in something bigger and better and more valuable. So I think those things are definitely drivers for me. And I think the other thing is that idea of systems, that things relate to one another. So it's nothing is independent of something else. So I love seeing things as a whole, and which pieces will then benefit some other piece. What do you need to do first? And that involves both, people and non-people processes and tools. So I really like to see those things come together and then, result in something, truly amazing.
And over the past 20 years of building, sorry, Scott, I see that you're going to, sorry, I beat you to the punch. I'm really excited to understand, Allan, over the past 20 years of having the opportunity to build, what has been your biggest learnings?
Oh, so this one's easy. This one's easy. And I think all, entrepreneurs and leaders and managers will eventually come to this conclusion. And you're probably going to guess what I'm going to say, right? Because when you first start your company or working on your idea, it really is all about the product and the features and the technology. And that's what excites you. But I think as you sort of move on and become, more mature about, the things that matter and what's tied to, actually creating value, it's all about the people, right? So I think what I have learned is that even though you really focus on these non-people things to begin with, what I think you learn at the end is that it actually has everything to do with the people. So I sort of joke that, really my job at Klipfolio is threefold. So I have to make sure there's enough money. So fine, end story. But then I have to make sure that we have the processes to hire the right people, and really, really focus on that. So how do we continually make sure that we are hiring the right people? And the third one is making sure that those right people play well together. So what are the structures? What's the organization? What's the DNA of the company? What's the culture and the safety environment of the company? How do you make sure that those amazing people actually work well together and produce something? And if you've got those things, if there's enough money, you hire the right people and they play well together, good things will happen. And all the features in the world will be built and all the benefits will be delivered and performance will happen. Right. So I think that's been perhaps my greatest realization, that why don't more entrepreneurs start with really thinking about the people?
Oh, I love that. And it's funny, Ange asked a different question than what I was going to ask, yet the answer you provided was still on point with that. So I'm curious though, Allan, and there is a bit of a pattern here about the importance of people. And you mentioned at the beginning, the importance of choosing the right partner. And you mentioned a few times about having the right co-founder if you're partnering with somebody, and the importance of those people.
Yep.
And then from there, talking about the importance of people on the team, and hiring the right people and making sure they play nice together. So I'm curious, how do you create an environment for your team to play nice? And not only that, but also, complete all these benefits and all these other things that they want to accomplish as a team.
Yeah, I think perhaps the most important one, so let's go under the assumption that you're hiring the right people. If you've done that, I think really the job of management is to make sure that you create an environment where there's safety in expressing criticism, feedback, concerns. If you do not have that, people are going to not voice their opinions, and we have lived this as well. So we're getting better every day at understanding what does a safe environment look like, and how do you really help people excel and feel like they're contributing in a good environment. But I really think that has to be very, very deliberate. I think it has to be reinforced with the executive team that this idea of a safe, positive environment is incredibly important, because otherwise you will not get those opinions out of your employee base. And then I think you also need to follow that through at the management level. Everybody knows that if somebody's going to leave, the number one reason that an employee leaves is because of their manager. I don't know what the percentage is, but more often than not, it seems to be because of that direct relationship. So, making sure that DNA gets communicated down. And we've spent probably only in the past 4 or 5 years, we've spent quite a bit of time making sure that we have coaching opportunities for the execs, coaching opportunities for the people managers in the company. We've spent time making sure that we've identified our values, and the values, they can't be hollow. I mean, you've got to really think that if somebody is not behaving in a value that is important to the company, you should be able to call them out in a meeting and say, hey, that wasn't in alignment with this value that we have. That's the way I think you should be thinking about it. Can you picture yourself doing that, right? And then I think the third thing that is really important is, and I think it's difficult. So I'm going to say it first, and then I'm going to talk about the difficulty. The third thing that's really important is identify, either correct or get rid of people that don't fall into that culture. The folks that are not creating a safe environment. And we've all seen them. I think the difficulty, maybe especially for senior staff, and in part this sounds a bit like an excuse. So maybe you need to help me understand how I can be better here. But I've often not been the first to know. So how does the senior staff, again, create an environment where, if somebody is, a bully, or if somebody is not acting within the values that have been established, how does the senior team immediately, get to understand that there's a problem here? And I think that's something maybe the CEO is sometimes, when people manage up, everything is rosy. So I think that's something where you do need to have some feelers in the company, and then act on that and investigate and triangulate. But we've certainly been very deliberate over the past probably 4 or 5 years in making sure that we create an environment that's safe, where people can play nicely together, and they can voice opinions. One of the other amazing exercises actually is, and this came from our development group, and I think a lot of dev teams do this. They have these retros, and inside of the process of a retro, you stand up a spreadsheet, and you invite everybody to write down for 20 minutes collaboratively. You write down, what are all the things that went well, like let's continue doing this. What are the things that were a distraction, didn't go well, we should stop doing this. What are the new things that we should start doing? You go through this process, and again, because it's there's the period where you can enter things without anybody jostling for position. Everybody gets a voice, and I think again that's a really nice way to even the playing field.
Definitely. And certainly happy to chat offline with regards to senior engagement and getting a little bit more information from the different levels of your organization. Sure. One thing that comes up for me, Allan, around this whole concept of safe to fail environments is, how do you empower your managers who have different leadership styles? How do you create that consistency for them? Yeah.
Yeah, we noticed that too. And I was chatting with Scott about that last week. When the company was younger, there was a lot of new managers that got promoted into people manager positions without any kind of, normalized training. And, at first, I think we noticed it more around, one manager would be saying this about the vacation policy, and somebody else would be saying something else about, something else. So, but I think the more important thing was those managers need to have that consistent, safe to fail type of philosophy. They need to be in step with the DNA of the company. So we started these people manager roundtables, and they were incredibly popular. Maybe because the executive wasn't invited, so the exec is not allowed, and it really was the entire sort of middle management group that again created a safe space for them to say, okay, well, what's working, what's not, what do you do in this situation? There's training and exercises, and we brought in some coaches as well for this group, and that coach would also coach us so that there was consistency, but that's worked really well. And we always do our sort of employee surveys. We look for engagement and retention metrics. And there was a marked improvement where, on the year preceding this management roundtable, communication and, I have respect, or whatever the standard question is about, I respect and work well with my manager. That increased actually quite dramatically as soon as we started that. So I do think that it worked quite well.
Fantastic.
One of the, and I mean, we're a little bit biased as coaches, but I'd like to hear, and you had mentioned that you started looking into actually bringing on coaches into your organization about 4 or 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so I was curious, what sparked that, and what changes have you seen, positive, negatives, from doing that?
So the first coach I brought in was actually probably more like 15 years ago.
Okay.
And that was Rob Shapiro, who's our head of HR. Rob was actually brought in as a CEO coach for me, and specifically around the idea that I really disliked and sort of clammed up when I had to do an all hands presentation. And now it's funny because the all hands at that group at that time was probably no more than 7 or 8 people. So it was a tiny little group, but I didn't like it. I wasn't prepped. I didn't know how to read the signals. So we brought Rob in, and then we've had this long-term relationship with him as our head of HR. So I think he's not a coach that we've brought in, but he's been sort of instrumental in making sure that we bring coaches in and that we seek outside help. So I forget what the original question was, but we've certainly used them throughout.
Yeah, no, and I think you touched on it there, and it was this idea of what kind of sparked you to decide, hey, I need some assistance. Yeah. It's one of those things, as as a CEO or business owners, we see, it's not always easy asking for help when everyone's always looking towards you for help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, get over it.
I love it.
Just let's go. Let's get this done. Okay, let's figure this out.
And I think it's actually quite there are so many business advisors, and I think the idea of executive coach is something that is much more established now than it was maybe 20 years ago. So I don't know. It's almost like if you want to get to the next step, you've got to stop what you're doing and start doing something else. You got to learn. You got to think of things differently. So yeah, just do it.
Yeah, it kind of resembles like the idea behind what got you here today won't necessarily get you where you need to go tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
Those new skills and letting go of the old ones, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
So Allan, what are 3 words of inspiration that you would want the world to hear?
So I've always been an optimist. And I think I'm quite lucky in that regard. I think, whenever I've come up against, a hurdle or something has gone wrong, it usually doesn't take me long to find, some kind of a silver lining. It may not be the solution, but it helps me think straight and get energy again. Mm-hmm. So, So there's a saying that one of my past CFOs used to say to me, and you may have heard it, but it's quite true, and I think it helps me. Nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems, and I think that's sort of an important right sizing philosophy. So these great things that entrepreneurs feel and these really big depths that they experience as well. Okay, nothing is ever as big or as good or as bad, right? So focus on moving forward, right? Don't get swayed and don't get marred in this depth. So I think that's definitely a philosophy that I would continue with. Other words that I would put out there is I don't know if it's a word, but it's more just work with people with trust and respect. It's like, I don't know why it's so difficult, but there are so many egos out there, that just really, really get in the way of listening and working together and respecting people. And like everybody just has to kind of chill and just respect people, and work with them like you would want them to work with you. I don't know what the word there is, but it's sort of a just be. Actually, that's the word. Just be kind.
There, yes.
Just be kind, in everything you do, right? So I think if you can do that, your friends, your colleagues, your customers will reward you, right?
Very much so.
I think that's something that I've really I almost become unkind when I see the opposite. So I think that's a really important value in business, and I mean everywhere, right? So yeah, I'd leave people with that for sure as well. And I don't know that there's a third. I mean, there probably is if I thought about it long enough, but
definitely. Yeah. I feel like we're really fortunate in this instance in understanding the right sizing philosophy that landed with me. And I'll keep that filed away for quite a long time now. Yeah. And then the words around trust and respect and being kind. Yeah. Also ego, that rings true to me in the sense of self-awareness, which could potentially be a whole other podcast, just throwing it out there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and you see these things, right? I mean, you see, but for both of those things, you see people really, really, taking bad news hard, or really getting overly excited about something that maybe not that earth-shattering, right? Okay, so let's take some perspective, right? And you're right, and be kind. Such a simple thing, but I think there's a lot of people that struggle with that.
Definitely. I hear you. And we want to thank you so much, Allan, for joining us today. It's been wonderful chatting with you and getting your insights and philosophies.
Well, much appreciated. Hopefully I had something valuable to share. So
most definitely, I can assert for sure. And we're looking forward to sharing all of your insights, entrepreneurial and people-wise, otherwise peopling, is that the right word? No, I'm blundering that totally. So we're going to cut it out. I'm going to stop for a sec. I'm no good. So we want to thank you and appreciate you for sharing your entrepreneurial insights with Intuitive Performance and our subscribers. And for those of you that would like more information on Klipfolio, we're going to be adding a link into our blog post page as well as our website. Take good care. Thank you very much for all of our subscribers to tuning in into another great episode of the Elevate Business podcast. Take good care. Thanks for listening to the Elevate Business podcast. I hope you enjoyed the program. You can subscribe to future podcasts at intuitiveperformance.com, where you can also sign up for webinars and learn more about professional coaching and our facilitation solutions available to help fire up your whole person performance skills and drive actions for success. Until next time, stay true to you and take care of each other. We are all better together. Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the Whole Person Leadership Cohort by Intuitive Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious.